Michael Jordan watches security remove a kid for wearing fake Jordans, then buys him the real ones. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's journey to basketball greatness didn't begin in a spotlight, nor did it happen overnight. Born in 1963 in Brooklyn, New York, Jordan's early life was marked by resilience and a relentless drive that would define his future. The family moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, when he was still young, and it was there, in this quieter setting, that Jordan's love for sports, and basketball in particular, was nurtured. Jordan wasn't always the standout athlete. In fact, his early days were full of challenges and frustrations that would have stopped many in their tracks. In high school, he was initially overlooked by the varsity basketball team. At 5 feet 11 inches as a sophomore, Jordan was not yet the towering, athletic figure he would later become. The coach, seeing his raw potential, cut him from the team. Instead of letting this setback define him, Jordan used it as fuel. His response was what set him apart from his peers. Rather than quit or get discouraged, he doubled down on his efforts. He practiced relentlessly, working on his shooting, his ball handling, and his conditioning. The court became his sanctuary. He returned the following year, stronger, faster, and more determined. His transformation was nothing short of remarkable, and by the time he was a senior, he was a standout player, recognized for his skill and his unwavering drive. But even as Jordan's talent began to shine, there were still obstacles. His father, James Jordan Sr., became one of the most influential figures in Michael's life. James wasn't just a supporter, he was a guide, teaching Michael important life lessons and instilling in him the values of hard work and humility. While many saw Michael's growing success, James helped keep him grounded, reminding him that talent alone wouldn't be enough to succeed. It was the work ethic, the discipline, and the willingness to push through adversity that would truly set him apart. Jordan's high school career culminated in a scholarship to the University of North Carolina, where he would play for the legendary coach Dean Smith. At UNC, Jordan continued to develop his game, learning from some of the best basketball minds in the world. His freshman year, Jordan had the opportunity to prove himself on a larger stage, and in 1982, he delivered in dramatic fashion. With the NCAA championship on the line, Jordan sank a game-winning shot in the final seconds against Georgetown, securing UNC's victory. It was a moment that foreshadowed the clutch performances that would define his career. That shot was just the beginning of what would soon become a basketball revolution. By the time Jordan was ready to leave college, he had proven himself as one of the best players in the country. His decision to declare for the NBA draft was expected, and when the Chicago Bulls selected him as the third overall pick in 1984, it was clear that Jordan's journey was about to take an entirely new turn. The expectations placed on him were enormous. Chicago had been struggling in the league for years, and Jordan's arrival was seen as the hope for a franchise desperate to rise from mediocrity. Jordan's rookie season was an instant revelation. He quickly became the face of the franchise, playing with a combination of finesse and power that the NBA hadn't seen in years. His leaping ability, ball handling skills, and scoring ability were second to none. He was electric, a force that commanded attention whenever he stepped onto the court. In his first year, he averaged 28.2 points per game, winning Rookie of the Year honors. But while Jordan's individual success was undeniable, the Chicago Bulls as a team were still far from a championship contender. The team struggled to find chemistry, and Jordan, despite his brilliance, was still learning the ins and outs of the NBA. It was during these early years that Jordan began to realize the difference between individual success and team success. He had the talent to dominate on the court, but the Bulls weren't winning. It wasn't just about his scoring, it was about leading the team and learning how to push his teammates to perform at their best. Jordan quickly found that winning in the NBA wasn't just about putting up numbers, it was about creating a culture of excellence, holding everyone, including himself, to the highest standards. The frustration of being a one-man show began to weigh on him, but it also ignited his desire to elevate not only his game but the game of everyone around him. In the years that followed, Jordan continued to evolve. He worked relentlessly in the offseason, improving his game in ways that were almost unfathomable for someone so already gifted. His scoring ability expanded as he added more elements to his offensive arsenal, and his defense became a hallmark of his game. Jordan wasn't content with simply being a great scorer, he wanted to be great at everything. He learned how to take over games, not just in the clutch, but in every moment. His work ethic became legendary. No one worked harder, and it showed in his performances. But even with all his growth, the championship success that he craved remained elusive. As Jordan's skills sharpened, so did his leadership. In 1987, under new coach Doug Collins, the Bulls began to shift their identity. The offense was built around Jordan, and he was allowed to flourish. He averaged an astonishing 37 points per game during the 1986-87 season, winning the scoring title and establishing himself as a dominant force in the league. His athleticism, combined with his fierce competitive nature, made him a nightmare for defenders. But there was still a missing piece, the right supporting cast. While Jordan was showing that he was a generational talent, the Bulls needed more than just a scoring machine to compete for titles. It wasn't until the addition of a key player in Scottie Pippen and the arrival of coach Phil Jackson in 1989 that the real shift occurred for the Bulls. Jackson brought with him a new philosophy, the triangle offense, which focused on team-oriented play and used Jordan's scoring ability as part of a larger system. The 1985-86 NBA season marked the start of Michael Jordan's rise to superstardom. Despite his injury setbacks, including a broken foot that kept him sidelined for a large portion of his second season, Jordan's return was nothing short of explosive. The moment he returned to the court, it was clear that the NBA had never seen a player quite like him. His presence was felt immediately. Jordan's ability to elevate his game and carry a team with limited resources around him showcased not only his natural talent but his drive to be the best. Jordan's return during the 1986 season proved that he was already one of the best players in the league, despite being just in his second year. His electrifying performances, including his memorable 63-point game against the Boston Celtics, set the stage for a career that would soon redefine the sport. The Celtics, the reigning champions, were considered one of the best teams in NBA history, and Jordan's performance in this game was a glimpse into his potential. Despite the Bulls losing that game, Jordan's performance against Boston's stout defense stood as a testament to his talent and the greatness that would unfold in the years to come. But while Jordan's individual brilliance was already clear, the team around him still struggled. The Chicago Bulls weren't yet a championship contender. They had a collection of solid players, but nothing compared to the firepower of teams like the Celtics, the Los Angeles Lakers, or even the Detroit Pistons. The frustration for Jordan was palpable. He was becoming the best player on the floor, but his team wasn't yet built to take on the league's top dogs. However, he was determined to change that. It was in the years that followed that Jordan's leadership skills began to shine. He knew that he couldn't do it alone. He worked relentlessly to improve his own game, but he also began to instill a sense of responsibility and urgency in his teammates. The frustration of not winning games, despite his stellar performances, pushed him to evolve not only as a player but as a leader. He learned how to get his teammates involved, to make the right passes, and to trust others on the court. This shift in mindset allowed Jordan to play a more complete game and, in time, it turned the Chicago Bulls from a one-man show into a contender. It wasn't until 1987 that the Bulls began to truly realize the potential of their roster. The arrival of Doug Collins as head coach provided a new direction for the team, and his decision to center the offense around Jordan paid immediate dividends. Collins allowed Jordan to flourish as the focal point of the team's attack, and Jordan's stats skyrocketed. He finished the 1986-87 season as the league's leading scorer with 37.1 points per game, a number that would become part of his legacy. Jordan was no longer just an exciting player to watch, he was becoming a force that could dominate entire games. Even with Jordan's brilliance, the Bulls still struggled in the postseason. They made it to the playoffs in 1987 but were quickly eliminated by the Boston Celtics, who were in their prime and nearly impossible to beat. Jordan's efforts were admirable, but the lack of depth on the Bulls roster and the lack of support for Jordan were significant hindrances. Despite these challenges, the 1987-88 season was a turning point. Collins and the Bulls were beginning to find the right chemistry, and Jordan's talent was becoming impossible to ignore. The 1987-88 season saw Jordan take yet another leap in his development. He led the league in scoring again and was named the NBA's most valuable player. This recognition was a huge moment in Jordan's career, signaling that the league had recognized his dominance. But more importantly, it was a step toward the success that Jordan would soon experience. It was during this season that Jordan's defensive prowess began to truly shine. He was named to the NBA All-Defensive First Team, an acknowledgement that his impact on both ends of the floor was unlike any other player's. However, even with all of Jordan's individual accomplishments, the Bulls were still not able to overcome the best teams in the East. The Detroit Pistons, in particular, posed a serious problem. They were physical, aggressive, and had one of the best defenses in the league. The Pistons' bad boys mentality, led by Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, made them a tough matchup for the Bulls. In the 1988-89 season, the Bulls found themselves facing the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. This series would be a defining moment for Jordan. Jordan entered the 1989 Eastern Conference Finals with the weight of the Bulls' hopes on his shoulders. He had reached new heights as a player, but this was a different kind of challenge. The Pistons were determined to wear Jordan down, both physically and mentally, with their rough-and-tumble play. The series was brutal, with each game more physical than the last. Despite his best efforts, the Bulls were ultimately overwhelmed by the Pistons' intensity, losing the series 4-2. Jordan's frustration boiled over, but in the aftermath of the loss, something clicked. He realized that if he wanted to overcome the Pistons and ultimately win a championship, he had to become more than just a scoring machine. He had to become stronger, more resilient, and smarter in how he approached the game. In the offseason, Jordan worked tirelessly to improve every aspect of his game. He focused on building his strength, improving his passing, and becoming more effective in the low post. He knew that to beat the Pistons, he needed to change his style of play. It was in these moments of reflection and self-improvement that Jordan's mindset began to evolve. He was no longer just focused on scoring. He understood that true greatness came from making his teammates better, from being the kind of leader who could lift the team to new heights. The 1990-91 season would be the turning point for the Chicago Bulls. Jordan was better than ever, but this time, he wasn't alone. Scottie Pippen, who had developed into an elite player, was now Jordan's right-hand man. The addition of key role players like Horace Grant and John Paxson helped round out the Bulls' roster. But it was Jordan's evolution as a leader, his ability to trust his teammates, and his newly developed physicality that allowed the Bulls to finally break through. In the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced off against the Pistons once again. This time, the result was different. The Bulls were no longer a one-man team. They played as a cohesive unit, and Jordan's leadership was the catalyst for their success. The Bulls defeated the Pistons 4-0 in a sweep, and Jordan's dominance was evident throughout the series. He had finally overcome the obstacle that had haunted him for years. The Pistons, once the team that had stymied Jordan at every turn, were no longer a threat. The Bulls' victory over the Pistons in 1991 marked the beginning of a new era. Jordan had broken through, and now the road to an NBA championship was within reach. The next challenge would come in the NBA Finals, where the Bulls would face the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. But for Jordan, the battles with the Pistons had prepared him for this moment. He had overcome his greatest hurdle, and now, with his teammates at his side, he was ready to take his place as the best player in the world. The 1991 NBA Finals marked the moment when Michael Jordan officially claimed his spot as the greatest player in the league. The Bulls defeated the Lakers 4-1, and Jordan was named Finals MVP. The stage was set for what would become one of the most dominant dynasties in NBA history. But for Jordan, the success was just beginning. His hunger for greatness was insatiable, and as the Bulls celebrated their first championship, it was clear that Michael Jordan was just getting started. Michael Jordan's victory in the 1991 NBA Finals was the culmination of years of work, frustration, and growth. The first championship was not just about a trophy, it was a breakthrough, a validation of all the sacrifices Jordan had made, the setbacks he had endured, and the relentless work ethic that had shaped him into the player he had become. But even as Jordan held the Finals MVP trophy and basked in the glory of his first title, it was clear that he wasn't finished. The hunger for more was undeniable. Jordan had always been about pushing limits, and this championship was just the beginning of what would become the most dominant run in NBA history. The 1991-92 season marked the start of the Bulls dynasty. With the core of Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and the leadership of coach Phil Jackson, the team was ready to prove that their championship was no fluke. The NBA had always been a league of great teams, but Jordan and the Bulls were now on a mission to solidify their place among the elite. This season, however, wouldn't be just about the competition, it would be about sustaining greatness. Throughout the regular season, the Bulls were an unstoppable force. Jordan, coming off his first Finals MVP, was even better than he had been the previous year. His scoring ability was at its peak, but now, he had become more than just an offensive weapon. His passing, his defense, and his leadership on the floor were as critical as ever. Jordan had evolved from a prolific scorer to a complete player. His confidence was unshakable, and he was starting to trust his teammates more. Scottie Pippen, who had already emerged as an elite player, was now one of the best all-around athletes in the NBA. Pippen's defense, playmaking, and leadership made him the perfect complement to Jordan. With Pippen, Jordan was no longer carrying the team alone. The Bulls were an unstoppable unit, with all the pieces in place for another deep playoff run. As the playoffs began, it was clear that the Bulls were on a different level than the rest of the league. In the first round, they faced the Miami Heat, who were overmatched from the start. The Bulls swept the series, and Jordan's performances were nothing short of spectacular. But the real test came in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Bulls would face their old rivals, the New York Knicks. The Knicks, led by their tough-minded coach Pat Riley and physical players like Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing, were a team built to challenge the Bulls' style of play. The series was hard-fought, with both teams bringing their best effort every game. The Knicks tried to push the Bulls to their limits with their physicality, but Jordan's leadership and Pippen's all-around play were too much for New York. The Bulls advanced to the NBA Finals once again, where they would face the Portland Trail Blazers. The 1992 NBA Finals marked the beginning of a new chapter for Jordan. While the Bulls had been dominant, this was Jordan's chance to fully establish his legacy. The Blazers were a tough, talented team led by Clyde Drexler, but they were no match for the firepower of the Bulls. In Game 1, Jordan delivered one of the most iconic performances in NBA history. He scored 35 points in the first half, showcasing his ability to take over a game like no other player in the league. But it wasn't just about his scoring. Jordan was doing it all, facilitating the offense, playing defense, and leading his team with a poise that was unshakable. The Blazers were helpless to stop him, and the Bulls cruised to a dominant victory in Game 1. The following games were more of the same. The Bulls were simply too much for the Blazers, and Jordan was at the forefront of everything. Game 2 was another standout moment for Jordan. He hit 6 three-pointers, a number that shocked many since Jordan was never known for his three-point shooting. The media dubbed this performance as the Jordan Rules, as Jordan's ability to excel in all aspects of the game proved just how much his influence had grown. He wasn't just a scorer, he was a complete player who could shape the outcome of a game with his leadership and versatility. As the series progressed, it became clear that the Blazers had no answer for Jordan. His dominance in Game 4, where he scored 46 points, was enough to seal the series and bring the Bulls their second consecutive NBA title. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the second year in a row, cementing his status as the best player in the world. The Bulls had done it again, and Jordan had proven that his first championship was no fluke. This was the start of a dynasty. The 1992-93 season saw the Bulls rise to even greater heights. Coming off back-to-back championships, they were now the team to beat in the NBA. The roster remained largely unchanged, but Jordan's intensity and focus were sharper than ever. The team continued to play at a high level, with Jordan and Pippen leading the charge. The Bulls were now considered a model of consistency, with their ability to close out games and execute in clutch moments being their trademark. The regular season was a dominant one, as the Bulls posted another 60-plus win season, securing the top seed in the East. Jordan was once again the engine that made the Bulls go, but this time, there was a deeper sense of urgency. Jordan wasn't just out to prove himself, he was out to prove that this era of the Bulls was the best that the NBA had ever seen. The team wasn't simply content with winning games, they wanted to leave a legacy. The combination of Jordan's leadership, Pippen's all-around play, and the supporting cast made the Bulls a terrifying opponent for any team in the league. The playoffs began with a sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers, followed by a hard-fought series against the New York Knicks. The Bulls showed their championship mettle, pushing through the physicality of the Knicks to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. There, they met the reigning champions, the Detroit Pistons, in what would be another test of their resolve. The Pistons were determined to stop the Bulls, but Jordan's focus was unshakable. He had learned how to beat the Pistons' defense, and with the addition of key players like B.J. Armstrong and John Paxson, the Bulls' offense was now more versatile than ever. The Bulls defeated the Pistons in a decisive 4-0 sweep, eliminating the team that had stood in their way for years. The 1993 NBA Finals was a showdown between the Bulls and the Phoenix Suns, led by the talented Charles Barkley. The series was a high-paced, back-and-forth affair, with the Suns pushing the Bulls to the limit. Game 1 was a statement game for Jordan, as he scored 35 points and led the Bulls to a dramatic victory. But the Suns weren't going down without a fight. Charles Barkley played out of his mind, and the Suns were able to win 2 of the next 3 games, tying the series 2-2. In Game 5, Jordan took over. His 41 points, combined with a clutch performance from Pippen, helped the Bulls take a crucial 3-2 lead. The series was tied at 2-2, and the tension was palpable. The Bulls had to close it out in Game 6. In what would be a fitting end to the season, Jordan put together another stellar performance, scoring 33 points and leading the Bulls to a 99-98 victory in Game 6. The Bulls had secured their 3rd consecutive championship, making them one of the most dominant teams in NBA history. For Jordan, this 3rd title was the validation of his place in basketball history. He had proven that he was not just a great player, he was the centerpiece of a dynasty that had redefined the sport. The 1993 season had been another year of dominance, but it also marked the peak of Jordan's career, at least for a time. The future of the Bulls seemed limitless, but a personal tragedy would soon lead to a dramatic change in the course of his career. Before he could even think about his next challenge, something would force him to take a step back and reconsider his future. After winning 3 consecutive championships, Michael Jordan's place in basketball history seemed solidified. The 1993 season had been another triumph for the Chicago Bulls, and Jordan had proven once again that he was the best player in the world. But just as the team reached the pinnacle of success, an event would change the course of Jordan's career. The tragic death of his father, James Jordan Sr., in July 1993, sent shockwaves through Jordan's life. His father had been a major influence on him, not just as a figure of support but also as a source of emotional grounding. His loss was devastating, and it altered everything for Michael. James Jordan had been a guiding force in Michael's life from an early age, not just as a father but as a confidant, mentor, and source of wisdom. The relationship between Michael and his father was inseparable. James had been the one who had instilled the work ethic that had defined Michael's career. It was his father who had driven him to play basketball, who had been there for every game, every practice, every moment of triumph and defeat. The man who had shared Michael's basketball journey from the very beginning was gone, and the loss left a void that could not be filled by championships or adulation. Michael was left struggling to make sense of it all. Jordan's reaction to his father's death was not something most would expect from a public figure like him. Instead of retreating from the world, he made the decision to walk away from the game. The decision was an emotional one, and it was clear that Jordan was in no frame of mind to continue playing. At the height of his career, with 3 straight championships and 5 MVP awards, Jordan shocked the sports world by announcing his first retirement from basketball. The announcement was not just a surprise, it was a heartbreak for many fans who had come to define the game by Michael Jordan's dominance. Jordan's decision to retire was an incredibly personal one. While many saw it as a loss for basketball, for Michael, it was a chance to step away from the pressures of the game and mourn the loss of his father. But his time away from basketball would not last long. With his father's passing fresh in his mind, Jordan sought comfort and solace in something his father had loved: baseball. At the time, Jordan was at a crossroads in his life. He had nothing left to prove in basketball. He had reached the pinnacle of his profession, but the tragedy had forced him to reevaluate everything. In March of 1994, Jordan signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and started playing baseball, a sport his father had always dreamed of him pursuing. Jordan had never played baseball professionally, but he had spent years in the backyard with his father, throwing pitches and dreaming about the game. Despite having a long history of success in basketball, Jordan approached baseball with the same intensity that had made him a legend. He reported to the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A affiliate of the White Sox, and spent the 1994 season trying to prove himself in a new sport. Although his baseball career never came close to matching the success he had in basketball, Jordan's time in the minors was a significant chapter in his life. He struggled at the plate, posting a .202 batting average in 1994. He was far from the player he had been on the basketball court, but that wasn't the point. For Jordan, the journey was about finding something beyond basketball, a way to process the loss of his father, and to explore a new challenge. Baseball gave him an escape from the grief, even though the sport itself didn't come naturally to him. Jordan's decision to switch sports had a profound impact on the basketball world. While some questioned his decision, others respected it. His love for the game was undeniable, and the competitive spirit that had made him a star in basketball was now manifesting in his efforts to learn the sport of baseball. However, Jordan's time in baseball was marked by a growing realization. He had unfinished business with basketball. The fire to compete, to be the best, never truly left him. Jordan may have stepped away from the game, but it had never left his heart. In March 1995, just under 2 years after his first retirement, Jordan made the decision to return to the NBA. The press conference was brief but powerful. Jordan simply stated, "I'm back." With those 2 words, he announced his return to the Chicago Bulls, a return that would ignite a new chapter in basketball history. At the time, Jordan's decision to return was met with excitement and skepticism. Would he still be the same player he had been before? Could he return to the NBA at the same level after being away for so long? Those questions were quickly answered. Jordan's comeback was met with immediate success, but it wasn't without its hurdles. He had to adjust to the pace of the game again, and his body had changed since his retirement. While he was still one of the most gifted athletes in the world, Jordan wasn't in peak basketball shape. Despite this, his basketball instincts and intelligence had not dulled. In his first game back, Jordan scored 19 points against the Indiana Pacers, showing that he was still a force on the court. By the time the playoffs arrived, it was clear that Jordan was not just back, he was back at the top of his game. The Bulls, led by Jordan's return, finished the 1995 regular season with a 72-10 record, setting an NBA record for the most wins in a season. The 1995-96 season was a year of dominance for the Bulls. With Jordan back, the team was revitalized. Scottie Pippen had grown into a superstar in his own right, and the addition of key veterans like Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc gave the Bulls the depth they had been missing. Coach Phil Jackson, who had been with the team through their early successes, had refined the team's approach with his famous triangle offense, which allowed players like Jordan and Pippen to thrive. The Bulls were more than just a one-man show now. They were a cohesive unit, working together toward the ultimate goal. Jordan's role on the team had shifted as well. While he was still the team's primary scorer, he had become more of a leader than ever before. His ability to involve his teammates, his trust in them, and his willingness to make the right play, rather than always taking the shot himself, made the team better. The Bulls were a dangerous combination of offensive brilliance, defensive prowess, and unselfish play. The 1996 season was their year, and it was clear that Michael Jordan was the centerpiece of it all. The playoffs brought the best out of the Bulls. They breezed through the first 3 rounds, defeating the Miami Heat, New York Knicks, and Orlando Magic to reach the NBA Finals for the first time since Jordan's return. The 1996 Finals would feature a matchup with the Seattle Supersonics, a team that had a strong defense and a talented lineup, led by Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp. But the Supersonics had no answer for Jordan's brilliance. The Bulls won the series 4-2, and Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 4th time in his career. The team's victory solidified their place as the greatest in the NBA. Jordan had not only returned to the game after his time away but had brought the Bulls to the top once again. The 1996 championship was a testament to his work ethic, leadership, and unyielding desire to win. Jordan's return to basketball was not just about personal redemption, it was about proving that no challenge was too great for him to conquer. After everything he had gone through, including the death of his father and his brief retirement, Jordan had come back stronger than ever. His career had come full circle, and he had once again proven that no matter the obstacles, he could rise above them. His impact on the game was undeniable, and the 1996 season was just the beginning of another dynasty. The 1996-97 season was a continuation of Michael Jordan's dominance in the NBA. After his return in 1995, Jordan had led the Chicago Bulls to their 4th title, and the team had proven they were the team to beat. But for Jordan, there was more to prove. The league had taken notice of his return, and he was determined to show that the Bulls' success was not a fluke. After all, he had been away from the game for nearly 2 years, and his critics were eager to see if he could still maintain the level of play that had made him a legend. From the start of the season, Jordan was relentless. His scoring was as efficient as ever, and his leadership on and off the court was felt throughout the team. He had a supporting cast that was more than capable of helping him achieve greatness. Scottie Pippen was flourishing as one of the league's premier all-around players. The addition of veterans like Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc gave the team depth, making the Bulls a formidable opponent on both ends of the court. The chemistry between Jordan and Pippen was at its peak, with the two of them forming one of the most dynamic duos the NBA had ever seen. Despite the Bulls' dominance, Jordan was not satisfied with simply being great, he was hungry for more. In his mind, the only thing that mattered was winning. Every practice, every game was an opportunity to sharpen his skills, and he pushed himself and his teammates to new heights. He was no longer the young, upstart player who had just entered the league. He was the greatest player in the world, and he played with the confidence and intensity that came with that title. The 1996-97 season also marked the return of Phil Jackson, who had coached the Bulls to their first 3 championships. Under Jackson's guidance, the Bulls had adopted the triangle offense, a system that relied on teamwork and unselfish play. This system was key to the Bulls' success, as it allowed Jordan to remain the focal point of the offense while also giving his teammates the opportunity to shine. The unselfishness that Jackson preached helped the Bulls become more than just a team built around one player. They were a team built on trust, chemistry, and a shared goal of winning. As the season progressed, it became clear that the Bulls were not only the best team in the NBA, they were also one of the best in history. Their 69-13 record was one of the best in league history, and they were a formidable force on both ends of the floor. Jordan's leadership was the driving force behind the team's success. His ability to take over games when necessary and his willingness to trust his teammates in critical moments were the hallmarks of his leadership. But it was not just his scoring that made him great, it was his ability to do everything that made him special. As the playoffs began, the Bulls were considered the clear favorites to win the championship. The first round brought a matchup with the Washington Bullets, a team with talent but no real chance of stopping the Bulls. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the Bulls made quick work of the Bullets, sweeping them 3-0. Jordan's performance was as expected, dominant and efficient. But the next challenge would come in the Eastern Conference semifinals, where they would face the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks, led by Dominique Wilkins, were a talented team that posed a real threat to the Bulls. The series was expected to be a tough battle, and the Hawks did not disappoint. They pushed the Bulls to the limit in a physical series that was marked by fierce competition. However, the Bulls were not to be denied. Jordan continued to lead the way, scoring at will and showing his ability to rise to the occasion. The Bulls won the series 4-1, with Jordan's leadership and scoring proving too much for the Hawks to handle. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls would face the Miami Heat, a team that had been on the rise in recent years. The Heat were a dangerous team with players like Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, but they were no match for the firepower of the Bulls. Jordan's dominance, combined with Pippen's defensive prowess and the team's depth, proved to be too much for Miami. The Bulls won the series 4-1, advancing to the NBA Finals for the second consecutive year. The stage was set for another showdown with a Western Conference powerhouse, this time the Utah Jazz. The Jazz, led by Hall of Famers Karl Malone and John Stockton, had been one of the best teams in the NBA throughout the 1990s, but they had never been able to capture the elusive championship. In the 1997 Finals, they would face their toughest test yet in the form of the Chicago Bulls. The series would be a hard-fought battle, with both teams giving everything they had. Malone and Stockton were fantastic, but the Bulls were still the better team. Game 1 was a hard-fought contest, with the Jazz pulling off a shocking victory in Chicago, taking a 1-0 series lead. The loss was a reminder to the Bulls that they couldn't take anything for granted. As the series shifted to Utah, the stakes became even higher. The Jazz were playing with confidence, and it seemed as if they were ready to dethrone the champions. The intensity of the finals was palpable, and every game felt like a potential turning point. Jordan, however, was playing at a level that no one in the series could match. In Game 2, the Bulls bounced back, with Jordan putting up a spectacular performance and the Bulls tying the series 1-1. The turning point of the series came in Game 5, a game that would become part of basketball legend. Despite battling illness, Jordan was suffering from a severe case of the flu. He played through it, delivering one of the most iconic performances in NBA history. Jordan scored 38 points in a gutsy performance that helped the Bulls take a 3-2 series lead. The Jazz had no answer for him, and Jordan's incredible effort not only helped the Bulls get closer to the championship, but it also solidified his status as the ultimate competitor. The Bulls returned to Chicago for Game 6, and it was there that Jordan sealed his legacy. In a game that would decide the series, Jordan's leadership and determination were on full display. With less than a minute remaining, Jordan hit a crucial shot to give the Bulls a 3-point lead, essentially putting the game out of reach. The Bulls won 90-86, clinching their 5th NBA championship in 7 years. Jordan was named Finals MVP once again, cementing his place in NBA history. The 1997 championship was another monumental achievement for Jordan and the Bulls. It proved that their success was no fluke. Jordan had led his team to another title, showcasing not just his incredible skills but his unwavering ability to perform under the most pressure-filled moments. It wasn't just about winning for Jordan, it was about dominating, and he had done it once again. As the confetti rained down, it was clear that Jordan was far from finished. There were still more challenges to overcome, and his pursuit of greatness was relentless. The 1997 season was a testament to everything that made Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player in history. But his journey was far from over. The 1997-98 season was a time of reflection and resolve for Michael Jordan. With 5 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless accolades, he had already proven himself as the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen. Yet, even as he entered his 14th season in the league, Jordan remained motivated. There was still work to do, still unfinished business. The Chicago Bulls, under the leadership of Jordan and coach Phil Jackson, were coming off 2 consecutive championships and were determined to make it 3 in a row. But despite their success, there was a looming sense of finality in the air. The 1997-98 season would be their last together as the iconic trio of Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman was on the brink of ending. The Bulls' quest for their 6th title in 8 years was about more than just basketball. It was about legacy, and the pressure to close out this era on top was ever present. The 1997-98 season was different from all others. The media, the fans, and even the players themselves could feel that the team's time together was running out. Jackson's contract was expiring, and there were growing rumors that the franchise would be torn apart if they didn't secure a title. The uncertainty created a unique atmosphere within the team. Jordan, though, remained as focused as ever. He had always played with a chip on his shoulder, using doubt as motivation, and now the stakes were even higher. His leadership, both on and off the court, became the backbone of the team. The Bulls' regular season was a display of dominance. Even as Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman aged, their collective basketball IQ and experience made them virtually unbeatable. Jordan, although in his mid-30s, continued to perform at an elite level. His scoring, defense, and ability to control the pace of the game were still unmatched. Pippen, with his all-around skills and ability to defend multiple positions, was playing at his peak, and Rodman, the relentless rebounder, continued to be a force on defense and the glass. The supporting cast of Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, and Luke Longley gave the team balance and depth, making the Bulls once again one of the most well-rounded teams in the league. However, the drama of the season was impossible to ignore. The media constantly speculated about the future of the Bulls, with headlines ranging from the possibility of Phil Jackson's departure to the potential breakup of the core group. But the team did what they had done best for years: they shut out the noise and focused on winning. Jordan, despite all the distractions, led the way. Every game felt like it could be his last. The fans and the media knew the end was near, and the pressure to cap off this dynasty with another title was intense. Jordan and the Bulls knew that they had to win not only for themselves but for the history books. As the playoffs approached, the Bulls were once again the team to beat. Despite their dominance, there was a sense that the competition was getting fiercer. Teams like the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks had become tougher opponents in recent years, and the Eastern Conference was full of talent. But even with the increasing challenges, the Bulls were a well-oiled machine. Their first-round matchup was against the New Jersey Nets, a team that was no match for the defending champions. The Bulls swept them with ease, with Jordan and Pippen playing like they had in their prime. The second round brought a familiar opponent, the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers, led by Reggie Miller, had been one of the toughest teams in the East and had pushed the Bulls to the limit in previous seasons. This series was expected to be a battle, and it didn't disappoint. The Pacers played physical, tough basketball, and Reggie Miller was in top form. However, despite their best efforts, the Pacers couldn't stop Jordan. The Bulls won the series in 6 games, with Jordan once again proving that when it mattered most, he was the player who could take over. His ability to rise above the competition was what set him apart from the rest. As the Bulls reached the Eastern Conference Finals, the pressure continued to mount. The Detroit Pistons had been a longtime rival of Chicago, but the real test in the Eastern Finals came from the up-and-coming Indiana Pacers. This was a series that would define Jordan's leadership. The Pacers had become a powerhouse, and with Miller's perimeter shooting, the Pacers were tough to beat. But Chicago's experience and Jordan's leadership ultimately carried the Bulls through. The series was long and exhausting, but once again, Jordan delivered when his team needed him most. In the finals, the Bulls would meet the Utah Jazz, a team led by Karl Malone and John Stockton. The Jazz had come close in previous years but had never been able to secure the title. They were hungry for their first championship, and they presented a serious challenge to the Bulls. The first few games of the finals were tight, with both teams exchanging wins and losses. The series felt like it could go either way. But Jordan, knowing this was his final shot at a 6th title, elevated his game to a level that was almost supernatural. One of the most memorable moments of the 1998 finals came in Game 5, when Jordan, despite battling through illness and exhaustion, willed his team to victory. The flu game, where Jordan played a grueling 44 minutes and scored 38 points, became the epitome of his legendary ability to perform under pressure. It was a game that showed the world that Jordan was not just physically gifted but mentally tough beyond measure. Even when his body was breaking down, Jordan's will to win never faltered. His performance in that game was one of the most iconic in basketball history. As the series returned to Chicago for Game 6, it was clear that the Jazz had no answer for Jordan. With the Bulls up by 3 with just seconds left, Jordan delivered what would become known as the last shot. It was a shot that sealed the title, and with it, his place in history. The ball left his hands, sailing through the air and into the net, clinching the 6th championship for the Chicago Bulls. Jordan, visibly emotional, had done what no one else in the NBA had done before him. He had led his team to 6 championships in 8 years. After the game, the weight of the moment settled in. For the first time, it felt as if Jordan's basketball career had truly come full circle. The dynasty was complete. The Chicago Bulls were champions once again, and Jordan had proven that even as his body aged, his heart and mind remained as sharp as ever. For Jordan, it wasn't just about the championships. It was about the journey, the relentless pursuit of greatness, and the memories created along the way. Jordan's final shot, his final game, his final season with the Chicago Bulls, everything had come together in a way that made sense. He had faced adversity, lost and won, and had done it all in the most dramatic, unforgettable way possible. The Bulls were champions, and Michael Jordan had proved, once again, that he was the greatest to ever play the game. As he walked off the court for the last time as a Chicago Bull, there was no doubt left in anyone's mind. Michael Jordan's legacy was cemented. After Michael Jordan's second retirement in 1999, the NBA seemed to enter a new era. The Chicago Bulls, once the pinnacle of basketball success, were left in disarray. Without Jordan, the team was just another franchise trying to rebuild and find its way. Jordan, however, was already planning his next chapter. His time away from the game had lasted just a few years, but it felt much longer. The competition in the NBA had shifted, but the fire that burned within Jordan was still alive. His decision to return for a second stint in the league, this time with the Washington Wizards, shocked many. Jordan's motivation for returning wasn't about proving to the world that he could still dominate. He had done that already. It wasn't about championships either. The Wizards were not expected to win titles, not in the same way the Bulls had in their heyday. Instead, Jordan's return to the NBA was personal. He wanted to challenge himself again. He wanted to experience the game from a different perspective and find out if his competitive drive could push a struggling team toward success. But even with all the new expectations, Jordan had his work cut out for him. He was 38 years old, past his prime, and competing against younger, faster, and more athletic players. Still, anyone who knew Jordan knew that if anyone could pull it off, it was him. When Jordan signed with the Washington Wizards in 2001, it was clear that he wasn't simply joining for a nostalgic comeback. This was about proving something to himself. The Wizards were far from a championship contender, finishing near the bottom of the Eastern Conference in the years before Jordan's arrival. But Jordan's presence alone was enough to draw attention. He was still Michael Jordan, the same man who had been the most dominant player in NBA history. His return would be a spectacle, one that not only drew fans to games but also forced the entire league to take notice of what was happening in Washington. Jordan's impact on the court was immediately felt. In his first season with the Wizards, he averaged 22.9 points per game, reminding the world that his skills had not diminished. His presence lifted the team, and even though they were not championship contenders, the Wizards saw improvements in their record. The players around Jordan were clearly benefiting from his leadership. The younger players, in particular, saw Jordan as the ultimate example of how to work, how to win, and how to prepare for the rigors of an NBA season. It wasn't just about his scoring, it was about his work ethic, his basketball IQ, and his ability to raise the level of those around him. His leadership didn't just come through in moments of brilliance on the court but also in practice and in the locker room. Jordan's time with the Wizards was different from his earlier years. He was no longer the centerpiece of a championship team, but his drive and determination remained unchanged. He still had the same competitive spirit, the same hunger to win. There was a new sense of mentorship in his role. Instead of trying to prove that he was the best player in the league, he wanted to teach the younger players how to get there. He worked closely with players like Jerry Stackhouse, Richard Hamilton, and Kwame Brown, trying to instill in them the same discipline that had helped him achieve greatness. It wasn't just about scoring, it was about the approach to the game. However, despite Jordan's best efforts, the Wizards were still not able to reach the heights they had hoped for. In the 2002-2003 season, the Wizards again missed the playoffs. While Jordan continued to play at a high level, the team struggled to put together a consistent performance. It became clear that the league had evolved since Jordan's prime. The younger teams were faster, more dynamic, and more athletic. But Jordan's legacy had already been cemented, and his return was never meant to duplicate the success of his Chicago days. Instead, it was a personal challenge, an opportunity to see how he could perform without the established dynasty he once led. Despite not winning titles with the Wizards, Jordan's second stint in the NBA was a resounding success in its own right. His influence on the game was still profound. For one last time, the NBA saw Jordan's greatness on display, albeit in a different form. His ability to take over games, to score with ease, and to make the key play when needed was still very much intact. More than that, his return to the NBA provided a full-circle moment for the league. Jordan had spent his career setting records and winning championships, but with the Wizards, he showed that he could still impact a team and a game even in his late 30s. That in itself was a testament to his greatness. Jordan's time in Washington also provided him with a chance to reflect on his legacy. He had already conquered the NBA, but this second chapter allowed him to see the game through a new lens. He was no longer the young star on the rise, nor was he the final piece of a dynasty. He was the veteran, the leader, the mentor. His time with the Wizards didn't end with another championship, but it ended with something far more meaningful, a recognition that his legacy extended beyond the courts of Chicago. Jordan had shown, yet again, that greatness wasn't simply about winning titles. It was about making an impact, about continuing to challenge yourself even after the peak has been reached. After the 2002-2003 season, Jordan announced that he would retire for a second time, this time for good. His decision to leave the game was met with mixed emotions from fans. On one hand, his time with the Wizards hadn't been the fairy tale ending that many had hoped for, but on the other, it had allowed Jordan to exit on his own terms. His return to the NBA had given him a chance to share his knowledge and leadership, and it was clear that the game would never be the same without him. Jordan's retirement in 2003 was final, but his legacy had already been etched into history. He retired as the NBA's all-time leader in scoring, a 6-time NBA champion, and a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. His impact on the game extended far beyond the basketball court. Jordan had reshaped the NBA and turned it into a global phenomenon. He had shown the world that basketball was about more than just the game. It was about character, determination, and, most importantly, inspiring others to dream big and strive for greatness. Jordan's return to the Wizards may not have resulted in another championship, but it reinforced the truth that Michael Jordan's greatness was about more than just titles. It was about the way he played the game and the way he carried himself. As Jordan exited the NBA for good, the league entered a new era. The torch had been passed, but Jordan's shadow would always loom large. His impact on the game would never fade, and his legacy would remain a guiding light for every player who followed. The story of Michael Jordan, from his beginnings in North Carolina to his time with the Wizards, was a story of greatness, of resilience, and of never stopping, even when the world already saw him as the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan's career was defined by moments of extraordinary greatness, each one etched in the memories of fans, players, and the sports world. After his second retirement, he had left an indelible mark on the NBA, redefined what it meant to be a champion, and set the standard for generations to come. But what Jordan's career ultimately showed was not just the accumulation of titles and accolades, but the impact he had off the court, the legacy of leadership, and his ability to inspire not only on the hardwood but also in the hearts of millions around the world. When Jordan retired from the Washington Wizards in 2003, he did so quietly, but it was not without a sense of finality. This time, there would be no comebacks, no second returns, no more comebacks to continue the chase for another title. He had accomplished everything. The 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, 10 scoring titles, and numerous other accolades were only part of the story. Jordan had turned basketball into a global phenomenon, and his influence stretched far beyond the sport. His signature shoes with Nike had become cultural icons, transcending basketball and becoming a part of everyday fashion. Jordan's business ventures, his ownership stake in the Charlotte Hornets, and his philanthropic work showed that he wasn't just a basketball player, he was a symbol of success, resilience, and dedication. Even in retirement, Jordan's shadow loomed over the league. He had set a standard for success that no one else had come close to matching. When new stars like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and others emerged, comparisons to Jordan were inevitable. No matter what they achieved, the question always lingered, could they ever surpass the legacy of Michael Jordan? The answer was simple. They didn't need to. Jordan's legacy wasn't just about records and rings, it was about a mindset, a drive, and a refusal to accept anything less than greatness. Jordan's retirement allowed him to reflect on his career and life, and over time, he found peace in the fact that his contributions to the sport would never be overshadowed. The basketball world had moved forward, but Jordan's legacy was timeless. His story was never one of perfect heroism, but it was a story of perseverance, of fighting against all odds to become the best. It wasn't always easy for him. He was cut from his high school team, faced crushing defeats, and was constantly under the microscope, but every obstacle was an opportunity to grow, to get better, and to push the limits of what was possible. Jordan's influence on basketball transcended his individual accomplishments. The mentality he instilled in the game became a part of the NBA fabric, creating an environment where every player knew the expectation was greatness. His focus on mental toughness, competitive spirit, and work ethic set the tone for how the game was played for decades. It wasn't just about being the best player on the court, it was about being the best version of yourself, pushing limits, and making everyone around you better. His leadership didn't just come through in moments of triumph, but in his ability to push teammates like Scottie Pippen and Steve Kerr, knowing that his success was tied to the success of the team. While the game had changed, Jordan's lessons were still relevant. As new stars took the stage, they looked up to Jordan's example. Even with different playing styles and approaches, they all admired his commitment, his ability to perform in high-pressure situations, and his legacy of winning. What Jordan had created was not just a dynasty with the Chicago Bulls, but a legacy that would carry on in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed his greatness. Off the court, Jordan also became a symbol of what it meant to achieve the impossible. His influence stretched far beyond basketball. He became a global ambassador for the game and an icon of entrepreneurship. His involvement in sports marketing, especially through his partnership with Nike, transformed the sneaker industry and helped shape the intersection of sports and fashion. The Air Jordan brand became more than just shoes, it became a cultural statement, influencing fashion, music, and pop culture. In his post-basketball years, Jordan stayed involved in the game. In 2010, he became part owner and president of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets. His transition from player to owner was a natural evolution. Jordan had always been an astute businessman, and his success in the NBA business world only further solidified his position as one of the most influential athletes of all time. His role with the Hornets also allowed him to mentor and guide the next generation of players, using the lessons he learned during his career to help them grow both on and off the court. As the years passed, Jordan's impact only grew. He was no longer the player on the court, but his legacy continued to shape the game. When players like LeBron James began to challenge Jordan's place in history, they did so with the understanding that Jordan's greatness was the benchmark. But the true legacy of Michael Jordan was never about being surpassed, it was about the way he defined excellence for generations to come. His greatness inspired countless athletes to push their limits, to aim higher, and to believe that with enough hard work, anything was possible. Despite all his success, Jordan remained humble in his retirement. He acknowledged the sacrifices he had made to get where he was, and while his competitive drive had shaped his career, it had also shaped his personal life. The loss of his father, the pressures of being constantly in the spotlight, and the toll that professional basketball took on him were not lost on Jordan. He had lived a life under intense scrutiny, and despite it all, he had never wavered in his commitment to winning and to excellence. But it was also clear that the love of the game, the thrill of competition, and the joy of playing with his teammates was what truly defined his career. In the years that followed his final retirement, Jordan continued to give back to the game and to the world. His charity work, his involvement in the community, and his investment in youth programs demonstrated that he cared deeply about the next generation. The same competitive spirit that had fueled his rise to greatness was now channeled into making a difference in the world. Jordan knew that while his career had defined an era, his legacy could continue to shape the future. As the decades passed, Michael Jordan remained a symbol of what is possible when talent, hard work, and determination meet. His journey from a young boy in Wilmington, North Carolina, to a global icon was one of triumph, resilience, and, above all, greatness. Jordan's story is a reminder that nothing in life is guaranteed, but with the right mindset, the right attitude, and the relentless pursuit of excellence, greatness is within reach. Michael Jordan's place in history was sealed, not just because of his 6 championships, his 5 MVPs, or his 10 scoring titles, but because of his unwavering commitment to being the best, inspiring millions, and changing the game of basketball forever. As he walked away from the court for the final time, Jordan had not just defined his legacy, he had defined what it meant to be great. His legacy, built on moments of brilliance and a dedication to excellence, will continue to resonate in the world of sports and beyond, forever.